Dixo presenta UGH number 88, The Last Space, ApeCoin DAO Sunsetting. Hosted by Jesus and Mocha Chief.
Good morning, everyone. GM, welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome in. See lots of familiar faces. Love to see that, and appreciate you all on what is our final episode for this chapter of Mocaverse Mondays, Unit Grand Hall. Please take a moment to reshare the space if you're just joining. We're holding a very special edition of Mocaverse Mondays today, one that's a little different from what we're used to. If you've been riding with us, for any part of this journey, from the earliest episodes to the ones more recently, we really want to thank you and say that from the outset. And as people join, we'll be thanking them individually. I see Mocha Chief up here. Thank you for joining, sir, and thank you for doing the co-host. I see also Izzy down there, so I'm not sure if they're able to come up too. So welcome them thank them for joining, and welcome them to the Mocaverse spaces. I'd like to say that we'll welcome them again, but we're not too sure what we'll do. We'll be pivoting at some point to something new, I'm sure, and we shall see what that branding is and what that looks like for us as Mochas, and with the Mocha DAO rolling out still. So, Mocha Chief, how are you doing, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having me once again. Good to be back here. Good to connect, and appreciate you as always.
No, I appreciate you, sir. It's really been a challenge sometimes, and could not have done it without you, and certainly would not have enjoyed the good times without you and all the others here too. So really special space today, and we'll be saying lots of thank yous, I'm sure, but a special thank you to you, sir. So again, we'll take a moment here and welcome the other speakers to the stage, and if you're here with us live, please feel free to request to come up as well. This is a space for everyone to reflect, share, speak freely. Really, it's our final space and a chance for us to commemorate that, as well as discuss, as is noted in the tweet that went out, what the closing of the ApeCoin DAO means for us as Mochas. So, a very interesting topic since this space started in a large part to support the voting of the Mocaverse in the ApeCoin DAO. So shout out to the usual team. Big love to all those who have supported us along the way, whether they're from the Mocaverse, the Open Campus crew, our friends at the Sandbox, and of course over in the ApeCoin DAO. So before we get into the topic, let's just go around the room and say hello to everyone else that's joined us. Crypto Credo, thank you. I'm so happy that you're here. I see Miss 3B is probably still on her commute, so thank you for being on the mic here, Crypto Credo. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a while, G. It's so good to hear your voice on these spaces.
You as well.
Yeah, 3B is just finishing up another call. She'll hop on as soon as she's done, but I'm here in the meantime.
Terrific. Thank you for being here. And we'll have lots of preamble to this, I think, because there's a bit of it, a few things to note with the closing of the ApeCoin DAO. So lots of time for speakers to arrive before we really start the discussion here. So I see Bobby Kunta with the Sandbox DAO account has joined us too. So that's really making a nice rounded crowd here already. Natalie's joining. Crypto Sheep has joined. It's going to be an exceptional space. It's the space or the faces that I really wanted to see in this space. So really happy you can join us. Thank you for being here. And we'll look forward to wrapping up this chapter in our journey together. So looking forward to that a lot. Not the wrapping up, of course, but the discussion about that. So, let's start to get into it. Here's why and where we're at today. Today marks the final episode, as noted, of Mocaverse Mondays as we know it. As many of you already know, the ApeCoin DAO is officially closing, I guess, or that's what is being proposed. And so we're going to discuss what that means for the broader ecosystem, right? And we've seen a lot of people discussing what that means for apes. I think it's still something that many are processing, and people are presuming that the discussions are happening behind the scenes with Animoca and Yuga and the players there. I'm not sure how many of those are happening yet. So I think we'll be able to get some insight here. So looking forward to that. And for us here in the Mocaverse, it also means reflecting on in Mocaverse United Grand Hall space, the Mocaverse Mondays. It's a chance, and also the Mocaverse at large. It means, reflecting on what's being built and what we've contributed to the space, and then of course what comes next. So I'd like to open the floor and hear from people as we start up the space. We've got enough people here, and we can certainly start to invite others. I see Crypto Sheep there. I'm not sure if he can jump on the mic. And Bobby Kunta, talented Mr. Ricky, has asked why this is the final episode, so we'll get into that as well. There's a bit of personal reasons for it on my behalf as well. So we'll discuss a bit about that. But mostly, it's a generally we could say it's a lack of support, right? And a lot of that has to do with the nature of what this is being created as Mocaverse Mondays, and us becoming a DAO, being our lane. That is something we'll talk about. Big Bull has posted a post by A116Z discussion around the end of Foundation era, and so we'll get into that, into the weeds, but there's a lot of changes in the space, and a lot of changes for me personally, so we will discuss some of those. And first of all, though, I really given that the ApeCoin DAO is almost certain to close, I really just want to get into that general question. What does it mean to you? And I guess us as mochas, but certainly not all of us here are mochas, so just want to hear from individuals. What does it mean to you, the ApeCoin DAO closing? Let's start with our co-host here, Mocha Chief. What does it mean to you having the ApeCoin DAO closing? By the way, this is G as us here, and I'm going to try to Mocha Chief, maybe you could send a co-host to G as us, and I can I guess I can.
I think that's on you. I think you're the only one that can do that. But yeah,
you'd think I'd figure it out on our final
it's only a year and a half later. No, but it was very interesting to see Garga pop into the forum with the new proposal, sunsetting the DAO and launching ApeCo, a new operating model for ApeCoin. But I think for ApeCoin to really reach its full potential, Yuga has to be on board. It was, I think it was a beautiful experiment, right? And I think for us, we learned a lot. We gained some super valuable experience. I remember when the Mochas were less than a month old, I went to LA and was really honored to meet with Yat, and it was 5 of us at that table. And the other 2, I believe, are long gone now, right? Like no longer even in the community, but it was Tyler, Yat, and 3 community members. And I asked Yat at the end of our meal together, what did he want to see from Mochas? And thank you for asking, right? Like you're the first, that's the first question today that wasn't like investigating and blah, 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 blah. Like, what do you want from us? And his answer was to be as involved in governance as we could. And I think the ApeCoin DAO really provided that opportunity to us. And we as Mochas were able to learn about governance in Web3. I think our community is better for that. I think so really it was, like I said, a beautiful experiment for us as a community. I think the ApeCoin DAO really did some cool things in Web3. And it's not dead yet, but ultimately it seems like it's heading that direction. It seems like they have the votes, right? And Yuga has the ability to weigh in. But if you look at just the support in general, I think it's pretty. I think it's an overwhelming tide that can't be fought against, right? That most likely the ApeCoin DAO is going to sunset. And when you look back at it, where I hate to call them failures, right? But some things that could have been done better. I think having a special counsel that was getting paid $250,000 a piece, that merely their job was to say, is this legal? Right. I don't know that that was the best direction, right? Like oversight simply, right? Like to me, I told Tyler this a long time ago when we were talking about the future, a future Mocha DAO, and if and when and how that rolls out. I said to him, I want to see him in charge of it. I want to see leadership. I want to see not like, yes, let's empower the community. Yes, let's sponsor cool things that we can do together. But there needs to be a leadership structure to make sure everything's on the same page. Any company has that. You can't just have every department going in any which a direction they feel like at any time, right? Like everything has to come together. And I think that's kind of what the ApeCoin DAO was lacking. They did pay the most renowned community members a lot of money to basically, is this legal? And like, yes, complete decentralization. I understand the ethos. I love it, but it's too easy for the wolves to game the sheep and to get the most sheep behind them, and that's who ultimately makes the decisions. And a lot of it ended up max extract. So really loved and appreciated the experience and grateful for the time that we spent there. But I think ultimately Yuga has to be behind whatever comes next for like ApeCoin to get to where I hope it goes. So
I really love that take. And thanks for breaking it down for people who are listening. And I think Danny has said they will show up. So this will be up on Apple and Spotify and the other podcast outlets. So this is another reason I jumped into this space, in spite of it not being the best time for me to do so. Is that, I wanted to conclude what has been recorded in these spaces. And I was thinking back to remarks I've made along the way and how what we're doing here is so foundational and transformative and stuff. And then thinking now, like, well, I guess that was, much ado about nothing. And yet your remarks just now do attest to the fact that it was foundational, right? It was very much so that, we tried and tested a lot of thought experiments, and some parts worked and some parts didn't work, and what was learned is what will be taken into the next iteration. And our contributions to that were enormous, really. Us and the ApeCoin DAO and Sandbox DAO, Open Campus, others have. Natalie could attest to all the DAOs that they've participated in, and how that collectively, will get us to that final iteration. Not final, but that iteration that has that so-called market fit, right? That works. But yeah, no, that's great, Mocha Chief. And I want to throw it to Credo. I think a lot of people on the timeline or in the spaces, I started raising it in these spaces that were coming up about this topic of the ApeCoin DAO amongst the apes mostly. What does this mean for Mocaverse, right? And then others, Frosty and others have put things out on the timeline tagging Animoca and whatnot, and people have said, and others have been relatively quiet. So there is the voting power that we have in the ApeCoin DAO. For those that don't know, Mocaverse has had variously quite a lot of voting power in the ApeCoin DAO. And that was one of our first value propositions as Mochas, to be given an allocation of the Animoca ApeCoin holdings, and then given that voting power for us individual or us Mocha holders. So we've been voting in the ApeCoin DAO, and now that the ApeCoin DAO is closing, what does that mean for us? Where does that voting power go, right? What are we gonna liquidate our ape, right? Like, is there any reason for us to hold all that ape any longer? That wouldn't help the ApeCoin DAO if we liquidate it, turn it into Mocha, put our bags up, right? The other thing is the Yat and Tyler have an active AIP, and people question them about, hey, what's going on with all that money you guys got? And Yat pointed out clearly on correctly on the timeline that hey, we didn't get any money yet. But again, there is a big AIP with Yat and Tyler. Tyler, I think, initiated that, and they co-authored it. So there is that outstanding issue, and so people are, I think, curious as to what's the take from the Mocha team. I'm not sure what Credo can speak to, but I'd love to also know, just of course, you as an individual, Credo. Certainly when we spent our first time on stage together on the Mocha Mint day, yes, I did fall asleep on the stage, but Credo and I don't think, the vibes weren't, hey, what's going on in the ApeCoin DAO? So Mocha is certainly not, you know what I mean, co-joined at the hip by with the ApeCoin DAO. Mocha's Mocaverse. And so this is sort of something else that we do. But yeah, how does it feel to you having this sunsetted? I think for a lot of Mochas, I did notice a declination in, participation interest in the ApeCoin DAO at some point. I don't know. What do you think, Credo?
Well, I mean, I'm personally not the one that's working on most of the DAO-related items, but personally, definitely, it's very interesting to me. I think it's, as Chief mentioned, it's like a very good experiment, right? Like, I think most people who are into crypto or into Web3 would agree that DAO on paper is like a very interesting and very cool concept that's like very somewhat idealistic in some ways. So it's definitely very cool to see how it actually played out in reality. In practice, there's a lot of details that were kind of figured out along the way. There were a lot of things that were, questionably done right and wrong, which is fair enough, like which is just for any kind of experiment, right? So it's definitely a very good learning experience from our end as well, or just any kind of project that's planning to have a DAO, for example. A lot of learning experiences, and it's cool that we actually took more of like a active role in terms of participating in a DAO votings. It's a cool opportunity to have from my perspective. I think ultimately it really goes back to how DAOs are executed, or how in practice rules or basically like guidelines are basically set to make sure the DAO and the project is constantly and always aligned in terms of what they're trying to achieve, what kind of objectives they're trying to reach, etc., which is also important for the community, right? Like it's for ApeDAO, it's about using the IP initially, and then with Yuga focusing a bit more on gaming side, there could be, potentially like a slight difference in terms of the focus there. So I think it makes sense to kind of restructure and have a think about, how to move forward from the current point. It's also interesting to see how community members reacted and how community members contributed to the DAO and how they leveraged the DAO in ways that they want to expand the community or like expand the project or not. Like everything is basically a really great learning experience for us. And I think from when I spoke to people who work on the Mocha DAO side, there's a lot of changes that we're also following, and we'll be making adjustments accordingly from this kind of learning experience as well. Actually, we have like Izzy and the audience, and she definitely has more input when it comes to a DAO side. So feel free to invite her later on as well. But yeah, to me, I think it's a really great learning experience for not just us, but for Web3 in general. And I think a lot of any kind of future DAO that's going to be released, community members, like participants, and also project will have better expectations and more aware of like what kind of guardrails or what kind of things, precautions need to take to ensure that DAOs serve the purpose that it's released on, and also like how it can be improved basically in the future as well.
Yeah, there's a whole discussion that we can have, and I think we'll certainly circle back to that, because we do have many people like Izzy. Thank you for joining us, Izzy, too, and others. Sandbox DAO is here. And Mo is joining us later. And so, yeah, there are people here who are still DAOing, right? And so, and Natalie, of course, can inform that discussion. So, Big Bull posted a very interesting take on this, right? Which is that, the foundation sort of DAO meta is over. And so that's a take. And so that's something to discuss, certainly. I do also like, the perspective you're having as a Mocaverse team member, and then talking about, how the reaction is to it, right? Because that's a whole other thing too. Like, what is the reaction? I think a lot of people, and this is why Gargus, to Mocha Chief's point, whether it's voted through or not, Garga and Yuga, it seems, are determined because of support they got on the timeline for their initial proposition to close it out. A lot of people were very enthusiastic about that, as I forget how they put it, but people looked at it as cruft was a word that was used, and so and yet others are lamenting it. And my take was, let's move through this with dignity, right, and respect to all others. Some of us have given, blood, sweat, and tears to do this. Let's just not say it was all just a waste of time and a big this or that. But a lot to glean from this, certainly. So we'll get back to those topics. But sorry, he is up here. Crypto Sheep is up here. But sorry, Crypto Sheep, before we go to you, I'm going to throw it to Izzy just while we're on the Mocaverse team side, because we are, going down this lane. Thank you for being here, Crypto Sheep. Izzy, welcome to the stage. I do want to ask, your take on this matter too. This, of course, does mean a lot for people who are setting up and rolling out DAOs. And welcome Mo here too, who has got a lot to do with this. So we'll get into that also. But personally, also I'm interested, how do people react as individuals? So Izzy, thank you for joining us to the stage, and welcome your remarks here. How do you feel about the closing of the ApeCoin DAO? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely a turning point for the Ape community, and certainly Web3 and DAOs in general. I think just looking at how things are progressing with this AIP, the idea of possibly sunsetting ApeCoin DAO is something that's obviously very close to the hearts of many people in the space. And that's something that we see clearly from all of the different discussions and debates that we see happening on the forum and on the timeline as well. And even as we're speaking now, the situation is still very much dynamic and evolving in real time, and we're seeing lots of different perspectives being shared from both ends of the spectrum. So it'll really be valuable to let the conversation continue to unfold as fully as it can during this discussion period, and for us to hear as many voices as possible, in the process of working towards drawing any final conclusions. What is clear is that the Ape community will have a very big decision to make, because we know that an AIP of the scale and impact will have its implications. And as we see more and more new information emerge, voters will ultimately have a key role in assessing potential outcomes and making what they believe to be well-informed voting decisions to drive forward the Ape ecosystem. So, we always say that Web3 never stops moving. So this is very much Web3 history in the making as well.
I love it. That was a great take and concise, although it's very difficult, I think, because there's so much to touch on here. And it's a huge pivot, right? I mean, you say Web3 changes. This change is a quantum leap.
What a great closing line there. Web3 history in the making.
There it is. That's the take. Web3 history in the making. I see Big Bull requesting too, so we'll get there. Maybe they can break down that A16Z take on the idea that things are changing, not only in the Web3 space, but the foundation era coming to an end, perhaps. I see them coming on stage, maybe coming on stage.
Work in progress.
Work in progress. But we are going to go to Crypto Sheep, who is here first, and welcome them. Crypto Sheep, how are you doing, brother? It's been way too long since we've exchanged words on a space together. How are you doing?
Good. Happy to see your face. I see that you've been going through some stuff. So, yeah, it's public space, right? So good luck with that. I support you and hope everything will be okay. And Mocha Chief, of course, always a pleasure to hear your voice as well. I think you guys are missed because you are always giving good takes, good guests, and it's a valuable space. And we need this, like open discussion and inspire each other to do better. And this Mocha Monday 88, sad to see that it's saying goodbye because it always brings value also for us, but also the DAO community, right? And I see James downstairs always laughing and supporting as always. But it's good that we support each other. I think that's so important. Like Big Bull's here, Mo, of course, Natalie, like you shouted out. And the ApeCoin DAO sunsetting. It's not being sunsetted right now, right? It's still on voting. So quite interesting to see how the voting will go. I think the NBA 6 million votes don't have a voice right now, even if it goes up for voting.
Yeah.
So personally, I don't know how this is really a community vote at this point, reflecting a community. But that aside, it is definitely Web3 DAO in the making, history in the making. I've been flying like 20 hours. I just arrived back, so I'm a little bit catching up on everything. But definitely here to contribute to some takes. I will be stepping in when necessary. But what I just said, I think that is my take at this moment. I don't think the results will reflect the community in large, which is sad, because I think it's still a DAO, right? And a DAO should reflect the majority of the people. And I think a DAO, in this case, the ApeCoin DAO, was always meant to fuel and support dreams from the community, to accelerate those kind of opportunities, which is very hard to do if you have not a DAO decentralized funding mechanism. And it's way harder to get funding from traditional businesses because not everything is translated in KPIs, milestones, and of course everyone knows here, everyone is smart here. I think most of us are smart, that the downside of this is that people can sway votes if you have a majority of the votes, which is very hard to tackle. But we will see what will happen. I think it's very clear what Garga has put out for the foundation. I think it's very clear what the new leadership wants. I think it's very clear, and we will see what the community and the outcome of the vote will be the coming months.
Yeah, I love that take. There's so much in that too that we can discuss. A couple things. I on your last point, the Garga in the space that was hosted by Rita recently spoke to it, and there'll be another tomorrow with Coffee with Captain with Garga. But really, they expressed to the points that Ernest and others were making about there being a process and this perhaps not following to the letter of the law. The process, them saying it's about community sentiment, and this will get this through. And I think Garga pointed out they've worked with enough lawyers to over the years to understand that this is something that can happen, and they can make it expeditious. And so it does sound like that's it is a done deal. And that's another was there any reaction other than a couple comments like, hey, we should be doing it another way? There wasn't really any protest from Ernest or others against it not following that. And we can throw it to Big Bull in a sec, who can discuss that. And Mohammed also knows a lot about this, Mo. But yeah, I've always maintained this. I think Lanzer and some of the others here got into the explanations and the breakdowns, making YouTube videos about how a foundation works and then how the DAO structure is based on that. And it's very interesting and everything, but it was also obvious to me that the community sentiment will lead the way forward more so than what is being papered along the way. And it's kind of like we're laying the tracks as we speed along in this freight train, and those tracks of, papered law and everything structure don't seem to keep up with the community, right? Which is just racing ahead, if that makes any sense. But I'm going to throw it to you, Big Bull, and say hello. I'm not sure if you were here before, Mohammed, and now I feel bad, but real quick, Big Bull, I'll throw it to you. Thank you for being here, and want to give you the chance to maybe really quickly break down that article that you've posted. Thank you for posting and pinning that. It's exceptional. I haven't read through it, but I am getting the gist of it through discussions you're having and seeing, a cursory take on it. Yeah, fascinating, Big Bull. What's your take on the closing of the ApeCoin DAO? What does it mean to you? And also, can you quickly break down what that A116Z article is about?
Yeah, I mean, the ApeCoin DAO is going to have a vote. It is based always on the number of who has the most ape, which is normal for DAO. I think, it is sad, and I think Ernest made that point that they haven't followed process. I think the lawyers are basing it on the principle that no one's going to bother suing them for doing this, although they probably can, because it would be... there's Cayman rules, and once there's a case, they can't move the assets. It gets frozen. The assets could be frozen and not be able to move out the foundation for 6 months. So, but I think they're working on the principle that not that it's good law, it's just that it's not worth it. And the large holders are aligned because most of them are investors in Yuga. So if the AIP is going to develop help develop things that support Yuga, so support other side BOYC and ApeCoin and ApeChain, then it will be aligned. The large institutional holders will, of course, want to see benefits going to Yuga, not just to ApeChain, right? So that's that. It's always been the way. From day one, this DAO was never open and transparent like some other DAOs, right? And so it never was that. Let's call it the philosophy or ethos of the ApeCoin DAO. I would say from day one, because it wasn't told, and that was okay. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. And it was siloed, like this article. I'll go on to the article now. One of the things it's talking about is saying, is DAOs, is it the end of DAOs, or even more so the end of foundations? And they mention how the foundation works quite well with Ethereum, but maybe consensus could do a better job. And my take on this is, for a DAO to truly work, the biggest holders need to be evangelists, and it can't be done because it's a legal workaround, right? And if it is done as a legal workaround, then the people, I'm not talking purely ApeCoin DAO, I'm just talking DAOs in general, then the intention of a DAO or of that specific DAO is not to truly change the way a group of people can come together to reach a common goal. And I think it's difficult because that requires a lot of altruism. You doing these spaces is altruism. Me writing, for the last 6 months in the Discord where I don't have a role is altruism, right? And so, what kind of projects or initiatives have altruism? Right? You get altruism through, Cam mentioned we need mercenaries, not missionaries. I actually think they need mercenaries. He said we need missionaries, not mercenaries, is what he said. But I actually think, most people are mercenaries, not missionaries, i.e., they're in NFTs and crypto because their objective is I spend time and I will end up with more financial benefit at the end of it, right? That's what most people come into. And, what kind of organizations have missionaries, right? So things that are deeply soul fulfilling missions. So, what kind of stuff would that be? That would be like, I want to be, a religious party, or, I'm talking back in the days when to be part of a religion, hundreds of years ago might have, get you killed, right? You had inquisitions, in various different countries, even in UK, you had the difference between the Protestants and Catholics that are all, now it was like almost the same, but, at the time it was, you would be willing to die for, basically, right? And
yeah,
so,
it still exists, by the way, Big Bull, as you know, in places like Nigeria, especially. I belong to a lot of those orders that you speak of. That Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake for being a Rosicrucian. I'm a lifetime member,
wow,
right?
yeah.
And so, if you are a Rosicrucian in Nigeria, we don't disclose our frauders and sorors publicly there because, absolutely, they
Well,
can be.
my point being is about this is it's to do something in a DAO format. People have to think of it as more than themselves. Whether it's religion, whether it's someone who cares about some politics thing, whether it's someone who's like, we care about climate change, whatever the thing is, that it's, you deeply care way more. You're a missionary, right? And so, if we think that most people in the ApeCoin DAO are not missionaries, including holders, and they're like, basically, what's the most mercenary thing? When's the coin going to go up? Right? That's the most mercenary statement, right? Can I extract from a DAO, right? More than I put back in value. These are all mercenary type activities, right? But one thing I think is important for the conversation for tomorrow is some bit of clarification when he talks about being a public benefit corporation. Public benefit corporations are actually not a non-profit mandate. They're a dual mandate. So that means they can generate a profit for a specific public benefit. So, so that means they're that type of vehicle. It's going to be it'd be good if they could actually specify in his AIP, like, we want to do a public benefit corporation. I mean, literally, they're such a large firm. Why couldn't they just register a public benefit corporation now, put it together and say, this is the vehicle, this is what we're doing, and this is going to be its initial mission, right? I mean, right now it's kind of like in Gaga or Yuga we trust, right? So that's what it is, and we'll see. I mean, it's if it's done right, it could be a good thing, right? The network revenue sharing, milestone vesting, contractual protections. By the way, a lot of that stuff you could do in a foundation too, right? So, it's. I think that it was definitely an unfair discussion to say nothing's been done, or that he should have first come on and had an apology and said, "I'm sorry, we've done nothing for 6 months," as being in charge of the committee, right? With Animoca, but we haven't done anything because we think potentially it's the wrong structure. And given the new legal changes, we were deeply thinking about how we could do this better. That would be a kind of reasonable way. But to say nothing's been done and listening to, I mean, I have to say through this process, I've gained a great deal of disrespect for a lot of apes, BAYC holders, in terms of their lack of intellectual capacity, but there is, people who, it's like jump and I'll go and jump how high. So we'll see. But, that's what most people are. And I think if we're realistic and we say, really, this isn't a deep soul mission, come on, don't kid yourself. It's just ApeCoin. And we all want to make a bit more ApeCoin. And if ApeCoin becomes something that goes up in price and has long-term sustainability and we all have a better life because of it, that's what most people want. And that's totally okay. And then, move on and let them have it, right? But I think the challenge is some people came into this reading the description of it and were disappointed, right? Whereas if we're realistic about what this DAO was and why it was there, and by the way, I'm not disclosing anything from an NDA point of view because these are all things that he or others have said, right? Then we take it from there, right? I mean, that's my kind of sort of take on this. But I think making a decision is okay, but but making a decision without thinking is not. And if people in DAOs who have votes make decisions without thinking, well, then perhaps the DAO is the wrong structure anyway.
No, I love that, Big Bull. There's so many things to unpack in what you said there too. It's funny because after 5 years in this space and participating in DAOs and watching the landscape change, right? I think a lot of people that came in here during COVID and lockdowns and whatever, looking for a new way forward in their own lives, they were more idealistic and they were more in line with doing things for the sake of building more so than bag go up even. And it's become more so a case of people that are still here now are about bag go up, and that people who were more idealistic have left. I note this because I believe what you're saying, that the DAO structure works very well for people who do that by virtue of what they do as a mandate, right? So I look at Freemasonry or some of these other organizations that do, that have, say, 50% of their efforts are charitable and doing things which are benevolent work. They fall very much in line with DAO structures, and people are willing to participate in those structures and uphold them, and they work well, I think. And there is a future for that type of thing moving forward with people who are altruistic, as you put it, and want to work together on something. We've used charters, right? My son is in a youth organization that's in the Freemasonic Concordant body, and the master of the charter, my son, when he became master, they get to write their own charter, right? And so they get to really create their own mandate to an extent, and I think this structure is something my son has learned, and it is very helpful to people like that who want to go on to create other organizations. So there's a lot that has been learned here. Just because it didn't work for the 8-Point DAO doesn't mean it's not necessarily going to work at all. And Yatsu and others have pointed out that DAOs aren't ideal now, but they will be, and I'm still bullish on that, and I'm curious how others feel about that too. Let's go around the room. We are going to run out of time. We've got a lot of people here. Important people have made their time here. I'm going to go to Mo. Thank you. You're exceptionally busy, and that is kind of why we are making you a sort of guest of honor here today, really, because you have investment in your work in all kinds of DAOs, and so really curious what this means to you as an individual with the sunsetting, proposed sunsetting of the ApeCoin DAO, as a person who is in the process of rolling out DAOs even, and participating heavily across DAOs in our space, including the Sandbox DAO and others, Open Campus and other communities. How are you doing, Mo? Long time no see, bro. and
it's
yeah.
It's been a hot minute. Obviously, we're always gathered when there's some kind of controversy or something big happening within the DAO, which is exactly what's happening now.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, and really looking forward to your take. I think a lot of people are curious, what this means not only to Animoca team, but to Tyler and Yat's AIP. And so I think a lot of these questions will be answered along the way. But curious, how do you feel about this, generally speaking, Mo, about the closing of the ApeCoin DAO, or proposed closing, right?
I think the timing of it is really bad, if I'm being completely honest, because we've just had the governance revamp. We've just announced CAB from Yuga. One's come over from Yuga as well. And it's like we're starting to change. We're moving from being as decentralized as we've been to having this idea of a CEO or executive director within ApeChain, and having a bit more of centralization so there can be accountability. And at least with accountability comes a transparency, which wasn't there in the previous structure because the special council members, the mandate was very loose outside of, again, checking the IPs and that side of things. So for me, it's we didn't give a chance for the new flywheel to take effect. And also historically seeing when there's been a big buzz around something and everyone votes in favor, and like the previous time was no more dumb shit and cancelling the working groups, even though there were challenges with the working groups. Some of the working groups and some members of the working groups were actually adding so much value to the ape ecosystem. But we ended up throwing out the baby with the bathwater, and I fear the same is going to happen again this time.
You can still be my baby, Mo. Don't worry.
Pause. Yeah, it is Thank you for your remarks, Mo, and also I forget who mentioned it, but yeah, Mo was somebody that did speak up, and wasn't one of the sheep or the people that just sort of jump when people say jump, and did put those comments. And I think Yap may have commented about this too, but I also think it is respectful for us as mochas to not interfere too much, and especially from a leadership position. So it's an interesting time to be in and to watch without getting into the fray too much.
Aren't interfering. I mean, they have the right to vote. I mean, I bought a mocha because I knew it had a DAO function, and so some people
Right.
mochas for it. So it's not interfering. It's like when people bought these mochas, having the voting and the DAO part was kind of part of it, right? And
Yep.
so
Yep.
I would say this is not a BA. It's not called BAOAC coin. It's called ApeCoin, and and we're all, related. The concept of the greater ape concept, right? So, no, I wouldn't say that. I think Mocaverse can, and I think that the challenges. I mean, I know probably Mo can't answer this question on a recorded space, but he can probably skirt around it, and not that he doesn't want to answer it, but the question of 582 was voted on, could go live. It said it was going to take 2 months to bring everything on the governor contract. They didn't put it through the governor contract, so therefore they can materially or immaterially change. This is where the gray area comes from a legal point of view, if you want to get into it, because that's what it says in the AIP, but it also said they were going to do it in 2 months. So it didn't happen. It obviously has been stalled. It had a budget, so that it's not rocket science. Arbitrum and others have done exactly the same thing before, so it wasn't delayed from a technical point of view. And I'm just wondering, why something like this got delayed. And share what you can and don't share what you can't.
All I can say is that after the governance revamp, I went on paternity leave, and when I came back, Cam went on paternity leave. So there hasn't been much communication, at least with me involved as special counsel. Other special counsel members who are more involved on the ape chain side of things have more insight into what's going on, and this has been the truth of the matter. That there's not been much, or at least with me involved, there's not been much communication as of yet. We used to have weekly
that's ridiculous.
foundation calls. They changed to monthly. It is ridiculous,
No,
which
not
is
that
why
you
all of
haven't done
this.
anything.
I
That's
mean,
not ridiculous. But what's ridiculous is they extended the time. Your time wasn't extended, I don't believe, right? I think it was only yours was extended, but it would have still been till now anyway. What I mean is they
yes.
extended Wabam's time, saying we need someone around. It's not like they didn't know his wife was pregnant. I mean, that.
No, this wasn't Wabam. This is Cam. This is Cam. No,
Oh,
they did. So like, this is Cam, not Wabam. Cam.
oh, sorry.
This is Cam coming in again as the new head of Ape, or executive director, or whatever title we're giving. For me, I just want to touch on Kabam. I tell you what, I can see that trending. But no, all jokes aside, like, we're talking about this AIP being a foregone conclusion. It's not a foregone conclusion. That's why it's an AIP. It has to go through a governance vote. It has to hit 69%. And as Mocaverse holders, we have a right. Again, I'm someone who believes in the Mocaverse ecosystem, but the reason why, even though I minted my Mochas and I've been continually adding Mocha NFTs, is to do with governance. I want to have more governance power on the Mocha side, in addition to having my say on the ApeCoin side as well. So this is something that affects us. I mean, this for me has a negative impact on the Mocaverse DAO.
No.
Why? Because we lose the right to vote in an ecosystem, which is what attracted many people to come into the Mocha ecosystem. Again, speaking specifically from a Mocha perspective, not necessarily from an ApeCoin perspective.
Yeah, and I want, sorry to jump in. I'm just really enthusiastic about this, Mo. I'd love you to keep cooking on this. And let's talk about this, right? Let's talk about the elephant in the room. I wanted to be respectful, and it's quite clear that the return to monkey, return to dumb shit meant, like, no more, like, a retrenchment strategy, as they say in business. Like, stick to your knitting, go, like, stop all the moonbirds, all the Mocaverse, all the whatever. That's great, except that we invested in you, and people like Mystery B, who I'm going to throw it to in a sec, and James and everybody, everyone in this room really has contributed into a huge community crossover, and we applauded that. That's huge, and that wasn't mentioned, as Big Bull said, by Garga, and in any respectful terms, like, thanks for everything that happened. That's been great. All this community crossover has really led to some great relationships and initiatives like ApeU, etc. And so I'm really curious what people think about that. Mo, I would add that the reason I jumped on, was kind of agitated on the mic there was, as I said, have tried to onboard people from other communities, which would do really well with this tech, like the Freemasonic Concordant family and body. A lot of different groups in there. And when I've invited those people to look from the outside, these people know a lot about, some of these charters predate, the Canadian government, and they know a lot about this type of running governance. And, my son knows Robert's rules and Keith and Kerr and how to do parliamentary procedure and stuff. And so having people come in here and look to this as a new way forward, and then to see this and to see us just sort of swallow it and go, okay, it does seem a bit funny. And like I said, I stood on these stages and said, like, what we're doing here is transformational and founding I don't want to be patriarchal, Natalie, but founding people's type thing. And so I felt stupid after that. I felt like, oh man, but I was just making an ass of myself up here. I hope nobody hears these spaces. But was it all just a sham, Mo, or is there something that moving forward we can look to and say, okay, yeah, these things do mean something. Big Bull too. James was one of the first people. When James and I were squabbling and stuff, he was just laughing at me when I talked about getting attorneys and stuff. And he's like, what is an attorney going to do with the foundation in the Caymans or whatever? You're up in Canada. Give me a break, dude. And so a lot of this, is it just sort of not vaporware, but vapor talk or something? I'm going to throw it back to you, Mo. And then I want to go to the Mystery B here because she's been giving her time endlessly and a huge supporter, and really want to hear her take. And, like you're saying, Mo, Mystery B, and Mocha Chief and I and others here, Crypto Creator, we really made work for ourselves to make that community crossover happen. And a lot of people invested in Mochas and vice versa into apes. I bought an ape along this journey. And, now if that nexus isn't there, do people start capitulating and be like, well, I got nothing to do with that community. They don't even have any love for us. Throw it back to you, Mo, and then we'll go to Mystery B. And Nat?
No, I think, yeah, I think that the bigger question really, or maybe the bigger reflection, probably a better way to put it, is like when the inception of the DAO, there was very little structure. And that's probably been the biggest challenge there, that, like you're saying, there's all of these communities, there's all of this crossover, there's all of these collabs, but anything meaningful that's come out has had to come out from, again, the community working together and continuing to push towards something. And you mentioned ApeU, and ApeU is a great example where season 1 was actually educating people on how to write AIPs, and then season 2 was a complete iteration and upgrade based on what the ecosystem's needs were. And it was, how can we help those who have MBA licenses to understand the business needs and how to run a business and how to generate revenue, how to generate profit, because these are just community members who are bringing their passions and maybe some of their business in Web 2 and leveraging their IP. They need to be supported. And it's like, well, why did it take from the DAO's inception 2.5, 3 years for something like that to come along versus having these there from the early rails? So I feel like some of the holdbacks or some of the lack of growth we've seen has been because of a lack of structure. And that's something we cannot forget. It's something we don't speak about because DAOs in general have no structure, which is also why I see a lot of people seeing the merit in what like Garga's come out and said, because an ApeCo means there's a lot more structure, there's a lot more accountability. So there's definitely an argument for it, but that doesn't also mean that we just, again, throw the baby out of the bathwater. DAOs haven't worked, or we know why they haven't worked, and we're starting to address these. Why can we not continue to iterate and grow on the current structure we have and let Yugo play a much more meaningful role within that? So like if they turn around and said, right, well, we know 30% of the treasury is going to Cam and Wabam and these guys to focus on building out Ape Chain and ApeCoin. Well, we're going to ask for 30-40% of the treasury to do something similar with our Yuga hat on. I think that would have been much more. I mean, like anything Gaga's going to say is going to be received positively, given the quite bullish moves that have been done. Like you've sold off Moonbirds, you've sold off CryptoPunks, like you said, return to Monkey, doubling down on the IP. All of this is very positive, but for me, the DAO adds to that. It doesn't take away from it if used correctly. And I feel that's the part there, if used correctly. That's the contentious subject all of these years through.
Yeah, I mean, the 25% of the treasury was already allocated to the foundation, which the committee is, anyone with 10 million, and that's basically Yuga, Animoca, and optionally the founders of Yuga would all have 10 million plus if they haven't sold. So they, they already had the control. They already had $30 million equivalent of approximately of budget to start doing stuff. There was nothing that would stop the foundation, making an ApeCo. There's nothing stopping the foundation from owning ApeCo company 100%, right? So the argument that, it wasn't done earlier, I don't think is reasonable. It just doesn't. It's
No, I think like if like legal, there's been a lot of legal restrictions, which is why when ApeCoin came into effect, was a foundation, was a DAO, there was a lot holding Yuga back for a long period of time from actually being active. So I do think that there are genuine legal reasons there, and actually what we're seeing in the industry today. I mean, Trump launched a Trump token.
Day before,
with no foundation, with nothing. Literally, like at the time, the incoming president was like, "Yo, here's my token," with no legal structure, no legal entity, nothing whatsoever. So that it changed the game on its head. In addition, with like Gary Gensler also leaving the SEC in the US, wanting to take a more crypto-friendly approach. So all of these things actually have had an impact, which is why it hasn't happened earlier.
So
like we can't just
sorry
write that off.
Sorry to pop in here. I heard Garga kind of mention like the biggest reasoning, right? Like for them to bring in the biggest and best partners, there is a little bit of certainty that's going to be required. The DAO tomorrow could vote for X, Y, and Z that the biggest and best partners in the world won't agree to.
That's not fully true. Because Yuga has 80 million votes. And so they can always downvote everything. So that's not true.
That's 8% of the tokens in circulation, right? Could someone come in and stronghold the DAO, right? Maybe not in circulation, right? But it's still, yes, I agree with what you're saying. Like they could weigh in on every vote. But also Yat was the one who said he approves of Yuga using their tokens in a way that would basically, he agrees with that ethos. But G, let me ask you, you're someone who works in IP and all these things. Do you understand that sentiment from Garga that, in order for them to utilize ApeCoin in the other side, he wants to see that certainty that maybe the DAO cannot provide?
I would say that absolutely DAOs are a brand hazard, reputational risk, legal liability or trajectory for liable for an IP. Certainly, yeah, for sure. I don't think you want to have things that happen in the DAO conflated with Disney. I don't think that will happen. So, yeah, I get that. On the other hand, I don't see that, with all due respect to Yuga, with the controversy surrounding, I think we lost Mo, surrounding Ryder Rip's lawsuit and etc., that right away, just that history alone precludes the Bored Ape IP from being on a 40-foot screen and being partnered with a major network. And I'm sorry, but that's just and I believe that Yuga knows this. I believe that's why there's been a huge investment in the codas and that original artwork that doesn't have that history attached to it as a global brand. But yeah, it's to my point about, you know, bringing other communities like, you know, the orders that I belong to, the societies that I belong to, and bring them into this and looking at this tech, like even the Motion Picture Union, trying to bring them into this and look at DAOs as a structure after 5 years, and then it coming to this ending where it's just on the whim of the head of some project that says, okay, we're going to do it this way now, and everybody jumps. That's kind of wild. After spending 5 years talking about, you know, like this is this and this and that, and Big Bull and others, you know, talking about the letter and of the law.
But the Ryder Rips one, he created a collection afterwards.
I'm saying that anything like, so my job in motion pictures, my motion pictures career largely is based around legal clearances, Big Bull. So anything with a history like that is just a no-go.
Yeah, but the history was someone made a copy. If someone goes and makes...
It's not what the space is about, Big Bull, but just take my word for it. I have a really good eye and ear for it, and I'm saying that anything with a history of that, like basically legal clearances starts with a internet search, a simple net search, and if anything problematic comes up, any histories like that, anything, boom, it's done. It's off the list. Go move on to something else. That's the matter of fact. So I'm not going to get into the semantics of or
okay, well, you can agree to disagree on that.
There you go. Okay. But yeah, all that aside, the appearances of how this looks to, yeah, motion picture networks, unions, others who might be coming in and contemplating using the structures of DAOs to set up enterprises, I don't think is looking good. So I will get to Sandbox DAO, who's up here on stage, and everybody else in a sec. But for Miss 3B, it's also not just, you know, whether DAOs work for us. It's about the community crossovers. We've done so much to do that. It has, I mentioned earlier, I think, in my impression, the Mocaverse and ApeCoin DAO honeymoon is over and has been over for a while. What's your take on this? What does the closing of the ApeCoin DAO mean to you, Miss 3B? And then sorry, Natalie, for making you wait. And let's get to you in a sec here because you have a lot to add here too. Miss 3B, what does it all mean to you? Are you there? Hello, welcome.
Yeah, I'm here. Well, I mean, I think for DAOs, essentially DAOs are also, you know, a type of community, right? Like people who are interested in certain topics, governance related matters, you know, people just who just want to contribute, kind of group together and work on stuff together and cook something together, you know? So I feel like DAOs, you know, regardless of whether realistically speaking or, you know, ideally speaking, whether it can achieve the ideal state of what a DAO should be, regardless of whether that is happening right now, I think DAOs are still, at the end of the day, are kind of like a hub for communities to gather, right? Because I mean, I'm going to speak from a communities angle. And I think, like, going back in the days, I believe it was like 2023 June, the first special council election was going on, and I believe that back then, I think G and Chief weren't hosting any spaces at that time, but then we were like, hey, like, is there anybody who's interested in governance related topics? And then we kind of like had a Telegram group, and then, you know, I just joined the team for like 2 months or something. And then basically we kind of had like a task force, and then we decided like, hey, maybe we could get Yat on stage. G and Chief could, you know, host that spaces. So that kind of happened. And then we also had like, I think we hosted like 5 spaces across all of the candidates because there were a lot between the first few rounds. You know, like those were fun days because we were all getting to learn about what each other were building. We were also building relationships and also building friendships. Like, I think a lot of the friendships that were built at that time are still long-standing today. So, I mean, regardless of whether, you know, ApeCoin DAO actually sunsets or not, I just feel like it is a special place for you know, a group of people. And, you know, it would be I mean, there are probably other forums where, you know, like-minded people could always gather together, but, you know, that's just the vibes that I would definitely miss.
I love that take, and it's a great transition when we get to Bobby Kunta and in the Sandbox DAO, because they've invited me to debate one of the DAO members there, Lanzer, about whether or not the DAO takes place in forums and snapshot chat threads, or whether it just happens here on Front Page on Twitter in these spaces. And I'm very
The DAO is all around
well,
us.
it is very much, and I feel that you got to be in the paint here in these spaces, and so it was always an interesting discussion. I do feel, and this has come up now with the sunsetting of the ApeCoin DAO as a topic amongst the apes, that like, where are we going to hang out and talk now? Where are we going to, you know what I mean? Where are people going to jump in if they're not already in the Discord, in those chats or meetings that are happening, calls that are happening in the Discord? Twitter allows others to come in, right, and join the group and join the discussion. So it's an interesting thing with DAOs being sunsetted. Where does that community meet? Where do new people onboard to a discussion, if not on these Twitter spaces that are around this? But there's always welcome apes, I guess. I feel like it's they're becoming a bit siloed. And the community crossover I mentioned with Miss 3B, those discussions were very much how I met a lot of community members and made, as you said, the friends and stuff. With that, I think it's a very important thing that we stand to lose, which is the flywheel synergistic effect, which is absolutely necessary, I think, to grow out the user needs of the other side, and what is prospected to be the big win for the ape chain and Yuga is the other side, and it being a giant game with all kinds of users. Where are those users coming from? Is it just the ape holders that are going to use it? That's not enough, right? So you need those daily active users, as the sandbox can attest to. And if you're not doing community crossovers and creating those synergies, if you're actually closing them down and shutting them down, like it appears to be happening here, I feel like that's a step in the wrong direction, but what do I know? Let's throw it to Natalie, who's here, giving all kinds of insight, because as many people know, but perhaps many don't know, Natalie has been involved in so many DAOs and has done a lot of this work, as I think Big Bull attested to earlier. The people doing this for the love and for the altruism is when it works. And so sometimes you do a lot of work, and then in the end it doesn't amount to much, but I think you've gleaned something and you move on and you iterate and you take that forward, right? So Natalie, how are you doing? How are you feeling about the ApeCoin DAO being sunsetted by all appearances?
Hello.
Good morning.
GM. I don't know why I'm up at this ungodly hour, but I'm
For
here.
us.
Anyways, I'm in good spirits despite it being 7 o'clock in the morning and me barely being awake, but I'm here. And yeah, I've been doing cool. Yeah. So there's that.
So how do you feel putting all this time into discussions about ApeCoin DAO and all of this, and then it coming to Garga, not on a whim, but saying, this is what we're going to do?
So I'm going to preface this by saying I know some of y'all got some tentacles in certain buckets and connected to people, and you've been biting your tongue and beating around the bush. I'm not that person. So welcome to my world. Personally, I'm gonna keep it funky because I don't know how y'all live with yourselves sometimes. I'm gonna be honest. So the thing is, everybody on the timeline, not everybody, but a lot of people are like, DAOs don't work, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you've only been in this DAO. Like, and so I've seen a lot of DAOs fail. Even right now, I'm like beefing with two different two different groups of people and two different DAOs. And that is, nobody has, as many DAOs I've been in for the last, I don't know, it's probably since 2019 or something. People have, DAO coordination is a very challenging thing, and that's for any organization. Figuring out how to collaborate and build in community with other people, like many organizations of all types heavily fail on that, primarily because of ego. Some people have alternative agendas and they're not very clear and frank about that. Some people want to be the kingmaker and they don't and some, especially in Web3, are incompetent as hell. And so there's a lot of reasons why DAOs fail. And so in this space, to be very frank, the call with Garga the other day kind of got under my skin because everybody's looking for a damn messiah. In reality, if you go look at in the mirror, you're the person who's going to, slap some elbow grease. And I said this on stage, like slap some elbow grease on your ashy ass elbows and do the work, because these DAOs don't work without people actively contributing. And I feel like it's just been mad disrespectful. There have been a lot of people who put a lot of work into making things happen. There are people that weren't getting paid by the DAO that would spend many, many hours, even us in here, just, having these conversations, creating forums, building, pushing forth AIPs to have discussions, if nothing else. And so I think there's a lot of things that we can point to in terms of how we gotten here, but some of it's our own personal responsibility and lack of accountability as to why we've gotten here, not just because certain people or Garga and them did not participate. To be very frank with you, I caused a ruckus around 582 and many other AIPs as well. And people are like, well, we're just gonna vote for no more dumb shit. And I'm just like, can we have a conversation though? So there are very few DAOs who operate without working groups or structures that allow for people to contribute to that, because it takes many people to operate a DAO, not just one person. So I'll move on to say this, that if people are looking for Messiah and thinking that you guys gonna save you from impending doom and Koi can go down, I personally think this is a huge mistake in the way that we're kind of pushing forth and sunsetting the DAO. Not that I'm opposed to it, it's just that we have to do things properly, and this has kind of been very rushed. Everybody's like, let's go quick. And that's why I got it Machi on stage the other day, because bro, it's just, you cannot move quickly on big decisions like this and think that there aren't things gonna fall through the crack. And we need to be thoughtful and impactful and be very intentional and really discuss how do we move forward, how do we honor the people that did actually contribute, how do we honor the kind of how we've gotten here, how do we assess what's happened, because we haven't done a lot of that outside of we already know the big bulls and the people who have been having this discussion for years. And so, but it needs to be the community now that has these assessments and looks back and has a retro and asks what has actually happened up until this point. Because if we don't have that conversation, y'all are wanting to rush into a situation and not actually look at the potential holes. Somebody can write an injunction or some other legal instrument, and y'all are not even clocking that shit because y'all are so amped up on Garga and them saying we're going to go into this new era, but we're missing a lot in the equation here. And so I'll land here and say that I have a lot to say, but we have a lot of people on stage and time be timing. But I just encourage us to continue to have these conversations. Stop saying DAOs fail. Some DAOs are not meant to be around for 85 years. Some DAOs, I've ran DAOs and we literally did some shit for a month or something, and that was a course that DAO ran because it's only for one specific reason, and then we closed down the DAO and people got what they got and we achieved what we achieved and kept it moving. Some DAOs I know have lasted for 4 or 5 years. They're keeping on going and they've had many reiterations, and that's where they're going. So some of y'all gotta participate in other DAOs. Go to Sandbox DAO, go to Mocha, go participate in other places, and then I can clock you for talking about DAOs fail and all these other things. I am done.
I love it. We'll come back to you, Natalie. I seen James was throwing thumbs down at you. Then he's throwing thumbs up. You never know.
Well, he need to come up here and check me, boo, because don't stay in the audience too long, James. Come up here.
Yeah, James wants
Love
it to get spicy.
Your opinion.
Yeah, he's on some. He's sending me DMs on some final episode. What? Drop some bombs, James, right? So he's trying to go there, and we're welcome.
James just want to give me a hug. That's
James.
all.
James
cool.
needs a hug, and no, we'll definitely get James in here. But I do want to get to talented Mr. Ricky, who had to drop from the stage and was up here waiting, and Kunta, Bobby Kunta from the Sandbox DAO, who's up here. Let's go to talented Mr. Ricky, who's been waiting for a long time. We'll get them in here before they have to drop again. Talented Mr. Ricky, what do you make all this? Thank you for being here, bro. And in terms of why final episode, it's because Mocaverse Monday specifically was, as Mr. B noted, really a spin-off of ApeComs, which was the preeminent space to gather in to discuss all things ApeCoin DAO. And so that's where the community gathered. It was 3 times a week. And as Mocaverse rolled out its voting, immense voting power and game-changing voting power in the ApeCoin DAO, I thought it prudent that we have our own space dedicated to the Mocaverse lens on the ApeCoin DAO, so that it's not so much an intrusion and taking up space, which is already a spicy thing for that community, and have our own space to supplement what they were doing. And so that's what inspired our space. It's been running alongside of ApeComs, which is now largely sunsetted also and has moved on to ApeChain Hub account. And so it's largely pivoted from the DAO congregations and, convening of community members into the ApeChain Hub, right? That was the trenches for a while, was the meta, and that's where the community was. And so it's just an iteration. We will come back and meet as community members in a new chapter, let's say, talented Mr. Ricky. But alongside of that, you as a fellow Canadian understand that we now have medical assistance in death MAID, as we call it here, which is euthanasia for our beloved ones. And my mother has opted in for that. She's very much looking forward to her D-Day, which is 2 Mondays from now. So I'm dealing with a lot, trying to get my head around that, deal with all that, and feeling like the worst son in the world because I can't take over a family home, all that, and we're about to lose all our possessions, our family home, everything like that, and it's all coming back to the fact that I'm a piece of shit that lives in Web3, not doing his movie job and not able to service mortgages and shit. How you doing, brother?
Wow. I don't know what to say to that last part.
It's
I'm
just
really
life,
sorry to
right?
hear that.
It's all,
yeah, man.
people go through it. And
my mom, so
right, a
yeah.
lot worse than me. So that's why I look at it in jest, and my mom's doing so as well.
You'll be in my thoughts and prayers. That's for
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you.
The transition is smooth as possible.
That's what I call it too, a transition. That's what we call it in our order. So yeah, very much.
That's good, man.
Thank you for that.
I don't like talking that much, so I'll be brief. I just wanted to come up and thank you personally. It's been an amazing ride just listening to you. I look forward to the spaces every week, just because I personally don't care about Ape or Ape DAO. I'm a Mocaverse guy, so as long as that's around, I'm good to go. Other than that, just keep doing what you're doing. I hope you come back after you take care of yourself and your family and you come back stronger.
That's super kind, and that's also what I want to welcome, especially as we move towards the end of the space. Just giving those kind of remarks. Thank you, and likewise. It's that's what I've enjoyed the most is the journey, and by that I mean the journey alongside all of you, right? The people and the conversations, the great conversation, as Megan from the Open Campus community calls it, and as it's known. Just really, really thank you. And this is the closing of a chapter, but there will, of course, be new chapters for all of us, and hopefully one that we share together. I see Frosties has joined us too, and
let's go Frosties.
Right, and talking about people who are bringing the important discussion to the timeline and not shying away from it. It's Frosties, right? So we really have met so many great people here, and I have no doubt that we will maintain those relationships, and they will also iterate. And looking forward to that. I did see your hand up too, Big Bull. I'm not forgetting you. I just do want to make sure we get to all the speakers who have been waiting, and I do see James is now up here. So we are going to give James a chance to bring some ruckus here. But yeah, James, thank you for being alongside this journey. We've had our fun along the way and our disagreements, and let things be water under the bridge. And I think that's been
the roller coaster that is G and James. It was a fun ride.
Well, it's funny, and it all. You look back at these things and you realize, like, just let things be water under the bridge. Don't take things too seriously. It's, for those of us that are apes and not even, I like to say, a professor taught me once. We're all just a bunch of funny monkeys, and some of us are funnier than others, right? Don't take yourself too damn seriously. So, yeah, with that, here's a really funny monkey. James, how you doing? Welcome, bro.
GM, the very last time on Mocaverse Monday 88, bro. I love it. So Mocaverse Monday ends today. Mocaverse Tuesday starts tomorrow. Yeah, I love it. Geez, insane. You know it. Yes. Nah, bro. First of all the respect, for the last weeks. You had a lot of bags to carry. So yeah, a lot of love and respect for
Thank
that.
you, bro.
And happy to see you active again, even in these interesting sad times for the ApeCoin DAO. First of all, I didn't throw thumbs down to Natalie. I mean, before I throw thumbs down to Natalie, a lot has to have happened. Yeah, no.
I like it.
throw
Let's
thumbs
go.
down.
Do it right now.
That was for Garga. I mean, you said it right. Yeah, I mean, that guy came back to Yuga. Yeah, then he selling all the IPs. Then he's posting every day Solana coins. Now he's diluting the DAO, rugging us 200 million from the banana bill up to Yuga. Yeah, so he has some money to play with. I don't know what Arbitrum and ApeChain will do when now all the big 200 million fund for developing ApeChain is now in the hands of Yuga. Let's see. Maybe we get Ape Sol next. So, like the next bridge on Relaylink will simply be Ape from Arbitrum to Ape Sol. Yeah, so that would be maybe the move I could expect from Gaga here. I mean, that was, 582 was a coordinated attack on the DAO. And I told everyone not to vote for that Wolf's AIP in the sheepskin. Yeah, because, you know it. Now the MBAs all are very, very happy, of course, that even their delegation they voted for will not come true. And I don't know. It's a hard situation. Even Big Boss said it, and I totally agree. The spaces Garga did was a lot of disrespect in his voice against the people from the DAO. So you could simply imagine he was talking like, all the guys work for the DAO, just rack money. I heard, and people told me it was like this, and you simply saw that he was kilometers and light years away from situations in the DAO which really happened. And just to throw, one phrase over every people's head was not very nice, especially to people like City and others who really worked their ass up honestly. And I saw them, working even without any payments and money and paying trips and everything out of their pockets. And no, you have to be precise, especially as a leader. If you piss on people's shoes, then please piss on the right shoes and not all around, left and right and everywhere. Yeah, that's what Gaga did. I don't know if that's, like you said, the right approach actually to also bring community together and not divide it even more. So yeah, overall interesting. I mean, not my take maybe. Also, like Big Boss said, they made the revamp AIP, and then they sent their own new head of Ape CEO, making great approaches. We're now making a business development section and everything. And 3 days later, your boss came and said, no, step aside. I come on now. I want this 250 million from all the treasury. Stay silent, yeah, bro. You don't get that. I want the money. So now he's getting 250 million, can do what they want. And bro, I the hell don't know why we think especially you guys the right place to park that huge amount of money. Every invest they made the last 5 years went down the trash road. So great. Now we give exactly these guys 250 million to develop. We even don't know what to develop. They just say, we want the money. What is happening with ApeChain? We don't know. What's happening with the DAO? We close it. What's happening with the BYC Club? We don't know. So we give the people we don't know, and they close the DAO all the money. Interesting, like blindly, just because some big people with some big Twitter accounts crying on the timeline and creating narratives like always. But yeah, just my spicy take for the 88 today, G. What you say?
I love it. I love it. Well, there's one other thing since we're going to go there, which is, and you've already gone there to an extent, and we'll invite Big Bull's comments. But again, I do want to go to Bobby Kunta from the Sandbox DAO and make sure we respect them. But yeah, one of the initial value propositions for the Mochas was to be granted the allocation of the Animoca ApeCoin holdings and be given that voting power. As Big Bull said, they purchased a Mocha so that it would have voting power in the ApeCoin DAO. I think they said, and the others certainly did. Are they going to capitulate now? Will they just sell that and have nothing to do with the DAO or with Mocaverse?
No way, no how. But G, my brother,
Yeah.
before I go any further, I just got to say farewell. I got to run 10:30.
Copy
I got
that.
something I got to
Yeah.
do. But just wanted to say thanks again. Farewell, number 88. It was a blast, and I'll catch you on the next adventure.
Yeah, we'll catch you on the next big one. It'll be me and you, whatever it is, brother, and some of these other great people here. So thank you. Appreciate you, Mocha Chief. For those that don't know, I've never received, in spite of what Machi Big Brother says and accuses me of on my own stages, of receiving undisclosed payments from Mocaverse and Sandbox. I do not receive anything. The only person that's ever given me anything in this space is Mocha Chief. They've given me thousands of dollars worth of NFTs, frankly, and to get me involved in things, and I've let them go to zero, but had the opportunity to be involved in stuff on the strength of Mocha Chief being a very benevolent soul. So thank you, Mocha Chief, on this recording.
Bye, Mocha Chief.
Mocha Chief is a real one. Bye, dude. He's dropped. So yeah, one of the things we've done is to record all these spaces. It's one of the reasons I came and did this, even though I'm on bucket list time with my mom. Is to put this to a recording, right, and button it up. This journey has been about us and what we've talked about on these stages. So yeah, fascinating times. But let's go to Bobby Kunta now with the Sandbox DAO. What does this mean to you, Bobby? Because, we've had conversations talking about how, Sandbox DAO is taking lessons from all the other DAOs that have established themselves, and to see this one go belly up on the whim of not on the whim, but on the pronouncement of a founder that, frankly, as James is noting, wasn't that active in the DAO at all. What does this all mean to you? What's your take?
Hey, T, thanks for the mic. And first of all, just a big hug to you for dealing with what you got to deal with over there. Family first. A lot of love to you, and for taking the time to do this here. Everybody else up on stage. Really, I'm just here to listen. I requested the mic to maybe bring a few more people into the room, but our perspective on this from the Sandbox DAO, at least from the admin team's perspective, is to simply watch here and learn, and not even have an opinion quite yet. I just learned about this on Thursday in Lisbon at the World of Women Gala when I heard about this happening, and so I think it's just learning for us and just joining the conversation, being a part of this. So that's it. I've really got very little to offer here. I just wanted to be on the stage, hopefully bring some Sandbox folks in. Let folks know there's always room for the DAOing over there. We love people's opinions, so jump in and join us and chat. That's about it, man. I don't got much. So thank you for everything you're doing, G. I hope this isn't the end of the ApeCoin. I don't know, the vibe that the apes are bringing, I'm sure, is going to take a new form. So,
yeah, and let's unravel that, pull on that thread, as they say. What do you make of this? Because there certainly has been, in our discussions, we very much were celebrating the idea that we were bringing these communities together. That's been our lane, is this General Assembly. And so, any thoughts on that? And I do appreciate the engagement farming. Please do help with that anytime. Really appreciate that. If you want to be a silent partner up here, well, absolutely welcome. But I do invite you to speak to that, because and also let me just evidence here that you are having this discussion in a Twitter space right now, and so to my argument that Twitter spaces are where it all happens, it is important to stay in these spaces, stay tapped in, because you could be very much out there on these other, like at NFC Lisbon, talking with big players and talking about how we're we have this relationship with the ApeCoin DAO and blah, 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 blah. And meanwhile, dude is in a space going like, hey, that's closed, right? And it really, things move fast, don't they, bro?
Yeah, it's certainly fast moving. So, I mean, we're here to try to learn what lessons we can and, just, I don't know, hopefully try to keep this going. I like the decentralization versus centralization talk and how what Mo reflected on earlier while he had the time to join here, how perhaps there wasn't enough time for the move towards having the CEO and the new proposed structure to take foothold. All of this takes a long time. So I'll step back. I mean, you might hear me say this a number of times on other spaces, but I've been involved in politics for decades, and it's really, really hard. And so what we're doing here is not just community building. We're building governments up from the ground, and we're all invested emotionally, and it's really, really hard work because there's finances involved too. And sometimes we put our wallets above our hearts, even the best of us. So that's it, man. There's a lot of lessons to be learned. There's papers to be published, psychology and sociology papers about all of this. So
it really is. Yeah. Yeah, no, great take. And we're going to go to Big Bull. And just to your point that, things change and the landscape changes too. It's funny because I was discussing with my mom yesterday, who was a mayor and who became the mayor of her municipality on the strength of being opposed to a development that would have happened that would have created issues with traffic and with not enough parking, etc. And now with densification and everything, fast forward to 15 years later, and she's no longer mayor. And now the mandate is for densification, regardless of the thoroughfares. And it's just funny because things change, and you got to keep up. And what was 15 years ago, let alone in this space, maybe 15 minutes ago, is no longer the case. Let's throw it to Big Bull. Big Bull, sorry for making you wait there. And what's on your mind immediately here?
Yeah, I mean, the point about centralization, decentralization, I think is a very interesting one, because the people originally were talking about the sandbox DAO, and they're like, it's too centralized. But the roadmap to go from a more centralized structure to a more decentralized structure over time is much easier than starting out totally decentralized and then expect people who don't know each other, don't have same common interest or same vision of where it's going to go and then try to add in some, let's call it central structures, so it can work more efficiently, right? And, so I think that was a big challenge when you talk about the ApeCoin DAO, right? Versus what Sandbox said in their white paper. I read the white paper about the DAO a while back, I think it was published 2 or 3 years ago. So that I think was interesting, and maybe someone else can make a comment on that point.
Yeah, definitely invite Sandbox DAO and Mocaverse DAO team as well. Izzy is here from the foundation, and of course Miss 3B and Crypto Credo. But it is certainly being the case with Mocaverse as well, that lessons learned from the very organic and decentralized approach to forming the DAO around the ApeCoin itself, the token, was a very different strategy than Mocaverse, which built in more structure and more of a framework, I would say. And then Sandbox, perhaps even more so, right? Again, lessons learned. But Big Bull, your hand is still up. Is that a UI thing, or do you have something else? But Sandbox.
No, I think it just doesn't go down. I've put it down now.
Okay, Sandbox just threw their hand down now too, though. Sandbox, are you trying to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to reply real quick. I think that those challenges of people pulling in both directions will be there, whether you're going from centralized to decentralized or vice versa. There's always going to be people pulling in both directions. Even with the progressive decentralization path that the Sandbox DAO is on, there's still voices echoing that they're saying this isn't even a real DAO. It's not decentralized, it's not autonomous. There's always going to be that kind of pushback, and it goes back to conversations we've had on these spaces and in the forums, not just on spaces, but about how we really need everybody involved, and it's So anyways, My point too is just a big bull, really. That I think we're going to see those challenges and people pulling in either direction, but we've just not seen too much of going from decentralized to a more centralized structure. And if there are any other DAO examples of that pathway, that would be great. This is just such a huge learning experience. I've set aside like half my week this week to just figure out what happened in ApeCoin DAO and apply that knowledge to the sandbox. So that's, we can grow as best we can. So really, I invite anybody, hit me up in the DMs, share your hot take that you might not want to on this stage, because this is the Kunt MC, by the way, behind the Sandbox DAO logo. And just that's it. That's all I got. Thanks for chiming in, Big Bull. I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, and I'd love to follow up afterwards as well. On a one-on-one, I can tell you a few more things. Of what as you call them, the hot takes, right? So it's.
Yeah, definitely. We got to invite Big Bull to the debate that Bobby Kunta has pitted me against somebody they deem to be a rival, an adversary of mine. No, I'm playing. They've got me in a position to debate Lanzer as to whether or not the DAO is happening on Twitter Spaces, or is it happening in these forums, which I say are friction for people like me who just don't want to drill down and do all that texting and whatnot and read through all that damn text. That the actual action is here. And so this debate that I will have with Lanzer will be a YouTube debate, I think, but definitely invite people to join. And it speaks to the point that that I made, and Garga stated very clearly that it doesn't really matter. And I've always said this to Lanzer, like, you can go and make all these videos about, and not to throw shade at what they're doing, it's very helpful in explaining what a foundation is and how this structure and everything works. But it just, like I said, we're laying tracks on a train that's moving breakneck, and we can't those tracks are being laid, and you're writing stuff on YouTube and whatever. It's redundant by the time it gets posted. And so I feel that the community sentiment, as Garga calls it, outweighs whatever tracks are being laid. You know what I mean? Like, it's just going to push forward. And but
you know what he means when he says community sentiment. His whole discussion was in Yuga Fam, right? And so that was the sentiment of certain apes in Yuga, right? Certain ape holders. It was not the ApeCoin sentiment, right? And so I think it's also tricky when you're trying to define your community. Like with Mocaverse or Sandbox, the community is kind of more clear. I mean, imagine if Sandbox is like, I want to be the token of all metaverses, and then you've got people from 3 or 4 different metaverses all have their own opinion, but only representing the interests mainly of one community, right?
100%, Big Bull. That's such a big thing in this space, because people don't really understand how voting works, and it's different across the space from quadratic to whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like 150 people went onto the forum. Yeah, and a lot of them hadn't been in there ever, and they were like, "I voted." Like literally, their knowledge of the DAO was zero, and I mean, maybe, and also they had no awareness that the sentiment is, what is the sentiment? If he wants to do a sentiment check, he needs to put a snapshot up.
Yeah.
And have people vote, because if you have 100,000, your vote counts 100,000 times more than someone would want.
Well, even that's my point, is that, stipulating a definition of, like, here's my example. When the ApeCoin DAO specifically, a lot of the community is frankly ignorant about how the Mocaverse votes. And so you get the take all the time, the Mocaverse voted this down. Mocaverse voted this down, and not understanding that the Mocaverse vote is a federation of voices, and largely controlled, frankly, by Mocha CN and James at one point. And so these specific delegations within the larger Mocaverse were voting one way or the other and largely determining thing. And then it was cast as the Mocaverse, including people like myself who were not voting against. And so, when you say, the community supports this, what is the stipulated definition of that community? And is it just a couple people within Yuga? It's very, very, very important to denote that and explain that to people who are tapping in, especially from outside the space, who don't get those nuances. Mocaverse voting on this has been posted in the comments here and DM'd to me by James, and so they are posting the fact that Mocha CN, and I thank them for being here always and being along this journey, Shishi, they have voted for this proposal, and also Yatsu has voted for this proposal. So is that a signal? And so, when people say, are people going to say, no, the Mocaverse is voting for this proposal? You feel me?
But they haven't voted yet, right? I mean, for this particular one.
James dropped.
Right.
I don't know what the snapshot is.
No, that was the revamp. That's not.
Oh, that's
now.
the revamp. My bad. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought
because they haven't even put up a vote yet, and that's
from this. Yeah. Okay.
And I think the biggest challenge you're talking about.
Before you keep cooking there, but not to diminish the point being that I think everyone can understand what I'm saying. If that were the case, and this is the case, even on that people are going to say the Mocaverse voted this down, right? When you're really talking about two wallets within the 8,888 Mochas, right? And so it is interesting when people say the community or the Mocaverse or the sandbox feels this way, right? It's such a federation of opinions, and to cast that as like one opinion is funny. But yeah, James has dropped to listener, but I did want to ask them what they had posted that for. But I'll throw it to the other people as we go around the space. We did have a couple more questions, but it's definitely time to wrap it up. The questions that I still have, I think, that will be answered at some point are, what does, and I'll invite Mystery B or Mocaverse team if they have any insight into this. But I did want to ask Tyler and Yat specifically what their thoughts are with the AIP that they have that's in progress. Will that be reiterated, perhaps in the Mocha Foundation some way? What do we as Mocha holders do with that ape that's been allocated to us as voting power? Is it going to be liquidated? Is it what use does it have? Do you know what I mean? Mr. B, any insight there?
Well, I can't really answer for Yat or Tyler, but the AIP basically there are team members, not team members, but there are people who have been observing them, and also Yat has also been providing updates via his personal handle, I believe. But then that's actually a good question that probably would arise within the team for discussion when there's a final conclusion to how the DAO is going to move forward.
Yeah, we'll have to. It'll be interesting. Izzy's down there, and I'm sure that's how the value of our foundation and what we're doing and what our treasury looks like could likely see some changes, given that we have perhaps 8 figures in in ApeCoin. Maybe that gets changed to Mocha, right? I don't know.
Well, that's a very big thing, right? Because the market depth of these kind of alt tokens is not that deep. Like literally, if there's a demand for millions of ApeCoin, the price goes up substantially, right? And and of course the reverse also is true. So it's going to be very interesting to see, because and I always ask this question, like they say it's a popular decision. Well, I always say to people, well, if you have a BOS or MOSC, will you buy back the 2 or 10,000 ApeCoin you were given on knowing that they can now go and build, like in how you think they would like, how you think they should be doing it? And if they, because fundamentally it's all about the demand, right? And so it's because I think it would have been a different decision if, tens of millions was held by individuals. Because don't forget that Animoca is also, I believe, a shareholder in Yuga, right? So, even if they're it's not in their interests to dump their ApeCoin,
right? And I wish we can get a little more insight here, but yeah, I I wondered that, Big Bull, and seeing that Yat is making, as Mystery B noted, some comments. I'm trying to see what that might look like, and would love some insight.
Where are his comments? Are they? Can someone put one in the nest? Did he make comments inside X, or he shared it somewhere else, or where did his comments?
The ones I'm thinking of, I'm not sure Mystery B's speaking of, but I've been seeing Yat make comments along the way. I think they were the remarks similar to Yat's in that, maybe this isn't the best way, or slow it down. I forget what it was, but I thought I saw something. And again, Mystery B noted from his own personal account. And but yeah, I'm not sure. Mystery B.
Oh, I was referring to the AIP update.
Oh yeah, okay.
where Yat posted that update. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and I do. How can I say? Look forward to hearing about what will happen with that, and I think it probably dispels notions from other teams who were planning on doing the same types of community crossovers that we had sort of initiated as Mocaverse, being one of the first big DAOs that started voting in another DAO as a way to create community crossover and engagement and synergies and flywheels. And I think it worked well. And that's my take on.
Well, it was interesting when it came to Mocha. There was actually, or Animoca, there was actually an AIP for $5 million, which with that one of Animoca Ventures, and I was chasing up I think 6 months ago, and I was like, why have you done nothing? Why are there no updates, mm-hmm. right? And then they said, oh, we never got the funds.
Yep.
And I know the reason why. I'm not going to say it on this.
Oh, please do. Come on.
No. That's but I didn't find out from within from the ApeCoin DAO why, but I know from another source. But yeah, the point is there was a mess up there, and so it's kind of interesting to see. And when they're so decentralized, and they're like, we have to prove we're not all one unit, and then it's almost like impossible when you're like each working group, should just have one. I mean, you look at some other DAOs, they have one person in charge, and each working group has a main working group. It doesn't make sense to have 5 groups and not one on top. So it's like, structurally, many things was definitely done in I think, a very, very legally defensive way, how things were done in ApeCoin DAO. And so, that hindered many things, right? And so, anyway, we'll see now. It's going to vote. I don't think the AIP is ready to vote. I think it's got a lot of problems with it, and it's actually against the rules of the DAO. So, if you bring something to vote which is against the rules of the DAO, you're effectively saying you've never believed in having a DAO in the first place, which is okay. So that's the reality about the ApeCoin DAO. And I think when you look to research DAOs to be involved in the future, I think it's really important to see, what do the founders, do they really want to DAO? I'd rather be involved in a DAO which is more centralized, but wants to be a DAO versus one which is being obtuse, And so, I think that's lessons learned, right? And people need to learn these lessons, whether it's from being as a contributor, whether it's someone who's a token holder, who likes voting, right? And, I think there was a big, and people joked about this about ApeCoin DAO, right? And said they couldn't even decentralized come up with what's the mission of the DAO, right? And so, and this was like before I even had a role. I remember about 2 years ago or something, and they came up with all these kind of random mission statements, and then, there's so little involvement, right? I mean, unless the leaders of the DAO are active or the large stakeholders are active in a DAO, I wouldn't get involved in a DAO again like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have taken that lesson from this, right? Like be very cautious for various reasons, including what you just stated. Absolutely, Big Bull. I agree with that. That resonates with me. We are getting towards the top of the second hour, so we are going to start to close this down. But I did want to note one other thing I heard in that space, which was that so the DAO really was a way for people to participate in the community, to participate and maybe look for some support, right? And so a lot of people participate because they want some support from the community to do a project or something that they're doing, an artist that wants attention and things. So, that's now what you do, right? You go to the Ape company and ask for it, or is there going to be a small grants setup that was, heralded as a success when it was done by ThankApe and ThriveCoin, and then with the banana bill. So, that was discussed, and there would be some version of that, hopefully, was the sentiment, I think. But it seemed to exclude ThankApe. So I did, I saw Money down here and sent them an invite, but I'm not sure if anyone here has any insight into what, ThankApe's role, if any, is, and if there's going to be a small grants program, or if people who want to participate and get some support to be part of the community in an official way, like as a company, MBA or whatever, like what's going on with all that? How's that going to look? It'll be interesting, but again, that's not really what today's space is about. Definitely food for thought, though.
Thanks for listening to ApeChain on Chain. This project is powered by the ApeCoin DAO through AIP 572, bringing our community's valuable conversations on chain and also on traditional audio platforms. Rate this episode and/or leave feedback and earn Dixo rewards by visiting the Dixo on-chain platform.